What's up, guys? Welcome to Hook One Bait and Tackle. We're here in Marine City, and today we got a pretty cool segment lined up. We're actually going to be producing a few of these. We talked about it here at the shop, and what we want to do is touch on a lot of things that we get a lot of questions on. We get a lot of questions in the shop. Some are pretty interesting, but for the most part, we get a lot of the same common questions over and over, and a lot of it has to do with cutting the learning curve when you're over here. So today is going to be just on jigs. You can see this mess in front of me. A lot of the times when you walk into a river system, whether it's St Clair, Detroit, Saginaw, you'll walk into one of their bait shops and you'll notice jigs everywhere. They got 1 ounce, 3/4, 5/8, half, 3/8, all different sizes. They got round balls, they got walleye style. They might have some that are shaped a little different that lay flat on the ground. They might have some that have shorter shanks with smaller hooks on them. That's what this segment's about. So we're going to touch on a lot of this stuff. We're not going to take a ton of time to do it, but basically segment one of Into the Shop. And we'll kind of dive right into it. So when you first go into one of these shops, you're going to be looking for a jig that's going to suit basically like your comfortability of fishing. So if you're new to vertical jigging and you're new to getting into this stuff, I highly suggest running a little bit bigger of a jig. This here is a 1 ounce, and this is a 1 ounce round ball. This is probably one of the most common ones that you'll see in a lot of the stores, and you'll probably see it a lot online. It's been catching fish for a long time. There's not a ton of action on those jigs, and not a ton of action on those baits, but it's a great way to get your bait down to the bottom. When you're in these river systems, all the walleyes, or a majority of the walleyes, are going to be down on the bottom. And that's what the purpose of all these are for. So a lot of the times you'll see a lot of guys run like these 1 ounce jigs, and they'll run them with some sort of finesse minnow, or possibly a paddle tail, or really any fluke tail minnow or worm. We'll do a whole nother shop talk segment on that, but we're going to focus mainly on the jigs today because, as you can tell, there's obviously a lot to cover. You'll mainly find 3 sizes in these guys. You're going to find them like we talked about: 1 ounce, 3/4, and 5/8. Now, when you're first getting started, you're going to want to stick to your 1 ounce and possibly your 3/4 ounce. Strictly on the charter boat, we use a lot of 3/4. Basically, I have an entire box dedicated to 3/4, and then another box that has a couple ounce, a couple 5/8, and then even smaller than that. But for the most part, we run 3/4 of an ounce. Now, the heavier weight you use is going to not only help you feel the bottom and feel the bites, but it's also going to help you with boat control. Keeping your line vertical and keeping your boat under control is going to be really important when you're in these river systems, and having a heavier jig is going to help you keep your line straight down. Now, a round ball jig is exactly what we say it is. It's a jig that's round in shape, and it's very good at getting your bait to the bottom, but it doesn't give you a ton of action. So early in the spring, when those fish are sluggish, you're not going to have a lot of issues using it, and a lot of times in the main run, you're going to catch plenty of fish on this. But when the bite starts to get a little finicky, that's when you're going to want to kind of switch it over, and that's when we really like to use a wedge head or a walleye style jig. Now, we use this jig year round. We use it early in the spring, we use it late in the spring, right during that main migration. We use it in the summer. We have a lot of success with it even in the dead of winter. It's all about presenting this bait and running it with different cadence, but it gives you an option. So what we're talking about here is the wedge head, the walleye style. This is a 1 ounce. And this particular jig, you can tell that it's shaped and it comes to a V to the point. And a lot of times that'll give you a little bit of action to kind of shoot off one way or another, and it can really trigger a lot of those reaction bites that these fish are having in the river. Now, both of these jigs, like we talked about, they're run with a bigger hook. So they're meant to be run with a longer plastic, whether it be a 4-inch fluke tail or a worm bait. Something a little different than that. Now, say you get into an area with some slack current, or maybe you're out in one of the channels there towards Lake St Clair where the current drops down a little bit, or you're in a different fishery, you're in a different river system with a little bit less current. Now, you can kind of mess around with a few things. So I'll show you. This here is the MVP jig. You can see it's a really similar style hook. This one is from Northland Tackle, but these are 1/2 ounce jigs. So these jigs are going to give you a little bit more freedom to maybe cast. You can tell that the way it's shaped, it'll be a little bit easier for you, especially like shooting down in front of baits, easily retrievable. So baits like these, you can kind of cast and get away with those 1/2 ounce baits, or still run your big plastics. And then you've got other baits like these here, you've got the Deep V jig. These is a 1/4 ounce, and these are 1/4 ounce moon eyes from VMC. Both of these jigs are extremely effective when you're going to downsize your plastic. When you're going to downsize your plastic. So say you want to run maybe a 3-inch bait or a 2.5-inch bait, or in the summer, it's really good tipped with a chunk of nightcrawler. Captain Anthony's helped figure that one out a little bit, but it's really good tipped with a nightcrawler. Not a lot of guys are running that presentation because a lot of times on a bigger jig, you're going to have issues getting the nightcrawler over this hook keeper, or smaller baits over this hook keeper here, because of the way the lead's poured on it. Where if you notice on these, I'll try and get them real close, you'll notice it's all a wire hook keeper. So where the plastic goes over, where the nightcrawler is going to go over, it's not going to tear it up too much. And sometimes downsizing those jigs is going to give you a really, really effective pattern, especially when the summer months roll around and those fish get really finicky. This time of the year for us, they're feeding a lot on bugs, a lot of the mayflies, the natural worms that are down there, the caddisflies just kind of passed. So being able to mimic a bug seems to work a little bit better, and it's a little bit more effective sometimes than running your traditional jigs and plastics. And then you'll see some jigs that look like this here. This is called the Destroyer jig from our friends over at Fat Boy Jigs. This jig is designed to cast deep water structures. So I'll hold it up next to the camera here, and you'll notice that it's got a thin wire keeper here, so you can run a lot of different baits on it. You'll notice that the eyelid is actually forward facing, and the bottom isn't super long, so it's not going to smush up with your plastic. Now this one has a super heavy duty hook. These jigs here we kind of designed, Roy kind of designed them, and you'll see that there's a lot of other options like this as well, but these are designed in the 3/4 and 1 ounce model, and those are designed to jig or cast into deeper, heavier structures. So if you're up on Lake Huron, or even if you're out here in the river and you're fishing a different run that's, you know, it's not uncommon in lower Lake Huron and around here to get into that, 40-foot range depth when you're looking for a lot of these fish, especially when the temperatures are warming up. So using a little bit heavier duty jig, one, like I said, with the eyelid facing forward, what that's going to do is it's going to let the bait rest like so on the bottom. So when you're pausing your bait, it's going to settle like this. And then when you go to pull it, instead of it being up top and wanting to go up, it's going to want to go out and up. So that helps this jig act a little bit differently. And again, I'm not saying that you can't go out there and cast a round ball jig. We go out offshore and we cast these round ball jigs and we catch plenty of fish on them. That's not what the segment's for. But what it is for, and same thing with this walleye wedge head style in 3/4 and in 5/8 are probably the most versatile jigs that we use out here on the river system, as far as pitching jigs, casting jigs, straight up vertical jigging, even jig trolling where you're going a little bit faster than the current and you're kind of just letting it drag and pop it behind you. They're super effective, but when you get to a certain time of year, or maybe even a certain point in your angling, I'll call it your angling career, but say you want to just kind of fine tune some things. You want to fine tune a lighter bite, or you want to start casting for these fish, or you want to start pitching jigs into slack current. No matter where you go, whether it's a big box store or a small mom and pop shop like us, you're going to see a large selection of jigs, and you're going to see them in all different shapes and all different sizes. So what you really want to focus on, and what you can ask whoever's working there is, I'd like to do this. How can I do that? And odds are they're going to give you the information that you need to cut down the learning curve. But that's just one thing we notice here at the shop, is we get a lot of people from out of the area, or a lot of people that are just kind of getting into it. And I notice a lot of small jigs that come through the shop. Guys will have 1/8, quarters tied up, 3/8 tied up, but they're trying to jig, and maybe the fish are in 35 foot of water. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I'm just saying it's very difficult. It's very difficult on yourself. It's difficult on your crew. It's difficult on your boat control. Make your life a little bit easier. Get out, get a 1 ounce or a 3/4 ounce jig, get some 4-inch plastics. That's the best way to start. And then you can really start dialing it in from there. Guys, I hope this segment was super helpful. Like I said, this is segment number 1 of many to come. And it's just our shop talk. It's a lot of questions that we get that come in the bait shop and that we send a lot of people out with. Because our main goal here is to put you guys on fish. You guys are on fish, you'll come into the shop. Life's good. If you've got any questions or any comments, please drop them below in the comments. Shoot us an email. shoot us a message on our website. We'll be happy to answer any questions. We'll be happy to touch on anything that you're looking on. Some things that you can look forward to. We're going to talk a lot about jigging and casting plastics. We're going to talk a lot about spinner fishing, bottom bouncers, and pulling crawlers in a river system as opposed to a lake system. Talk a lot about whipping, which some of you guys might have no idea what whip fishing is. It's one of the fastest ways to catch walleyes when the bite's real good, and it's an after dark type method. So we'll talk a little bit about whipping, and then we'll open it up. We'll talk a little bit about catching river smallmouth. We'll talk a little bit about targeting these sturgeon and targeting these muskies, because we're really lucky. We're here on the St Clair River, and we get an opportunity to chase every fish that swims in the Great Lakes for the most part. But obviously walleye are our bread and butter. So again, guys, please give us a like, share, and subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel. That means the world to us, so we can keep doing this kind of stuff and we can keep spreading some information for you guys. And if you need anything, you know where to find us. Tight lines.